Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, as always, but my good friend and co-host, Mark Etheridge. We are here to do another fall ball whip-around episode. Mark's been out on the road. I'm getting ready to get out on the road, so we've got a lot to talk about in this episode. First, a quick thank you to Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover. Since about this time last year, they came on board with us before last season. Thrilled to have them on board. Hope that partnership continues well into the future. Mark, we're coming down to it. Last breaths of fall here. So we're at the stage of the game where it feels like every conversation I have with a coach begins with something like, "Yep, we're just trying to get in the barn before the injuries hit." Is kind of essentially where we're at. But we're coming close to wrapping up here in terms of fall ball.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of places they are already done, and a few places are really wrapping up. They've got either one or two more weekends. So, yeah, you can also you starting to get an idea of who the key players are going to be. What the lineups to a point are going to look like. There's obviously going to be position battles going on into the spring, but I do think that we're starting to get an idea of the pecking order, or at least within tiers within the conference. Certainly they're going to be the obvious candidates at the top, but are there some teams that we feel like are going to be much improved? Are there teams that maybe that suffered some pretty heavy personnel losses? What do their newcomers look like? Those kinds of things. And I do feel like I saw a couple of those this weekend with Florida and Georgia. Eager to kind of dive into them and let's see what we think of the Gators and the Bulldogs heading into spring.
Yeah, it's a good place to start there with your recent in-person looks at Florida and Georgia. Quick note though, I don't know about you, but the idea that so I'm going to be out on my last trip of the fall here the next 6 days or so, and then by the time I get back, we're like a couple weeks from Thanksgiving. And then once we get past Thanksgiving, it is like a runaway mine train in terms of getting to opening day, because at least from where we sit, and I know we've mentioned this on the show before, we get past Thanksgiving. Okay. December's pretty quiet, but we start kind of hashing out preview stuff like pretty much immediately after New Year's. And really for you and I a little bit before that, because we have to map out our map out our content plan and all that kind of stuff, which is great. Starts to get you excited for the year, but that stuff comes up pretty quick. So faster and faster every year. I used to not believe, like my parents used to tell me, just wait until you get older. Time goes by so quick. And I just thought they were just, didn't know what they were talking about. And turns out they're right. So
you were a lot smarter when you were younger. Right.
I was, and as the years go by, I just know less and less. That's the way it goes. It's the way it goes. Let's start with Florida, Mark, because it feels like not only is that the sequential order that the actual chronological order that you saw them, but also that's where a lot of the interesting stories are. Obviously, Kevin O'Sullivan still on his leave of absence. Chuck Girolamo, I think since I can't remember the last episode Chuck Girolamo, who was the interim. Left for the associate head coach job at Tennessee under new head coach Josh Elander. So you're looking around at the dugout, and it's like, who is going to, you've got David Kopp, you got Taylor Black. Those two guys are still there. And, there's an army of, like at most SEC programs, an army of gratis. Like they got plenty of people around.
Right.
But then they brought in Tom Slater, who I think most famously known as the head coach of Auburn for a spell, but he's just kind of been around the SEC. Let me actually start there, Mark, just because you covered him in a previous, so give a listeners who maybe don't know his CV, his resume, who is Tom Slater? What was he known for? Just give us the rundown on what we maybe should expect from him and who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he was at Auburn. I guess in the 2000s, he was the head coach there. He had been an assistant there previously, went off to VMI and was a head coach there and had some success and got the job at Auburn. He's definitely he's a hitting guy, and that's what Chuck Girolamo was. So it made sense, for Slate to come in and be that hitting guy. He's also been a head coach before in the SEC. It was a long time ago, so certainly the sport has evolved since then. But he's he's a personable guy. I think he'll do fine, with the ancillary parts of having that interim job, and then handling media, handling player. Roster management, that sort of stuff over the holidays, all that good stuff. I think that the next part will be once Kevin O'Sullivan returns, and we do expect him to return. Slater will stay on as the associate head coach, right? And he'll have a big say in running the offense and in handling some of the day-to-day things that an associate head coach would run. I do think that's going to be, he's a guy who's been around a long time, he's got a professional background as well, which plays well when you're talking about a program like Florida, who puts a lot of players into pro ball. So he can add that, that little bit of an edge there. Now, another interesting part of this is that, Florida was down to two on-field coaches. So he's coming in and he and Taylor Black and David Kopp, they're taking that through to the finish line, right? To the rest of the fall drills, and understand you're going to be down there and see them when they take on, is it Georgia Southern? So that'll be interesting because they played really 9.5 innings against Jacksonville when I saw them Friday night, and the pitching was next level. It was really impressive, both from a velo standpoint and just overall stuff, and the pitchability was good as well. They had a few more walks, but you see that in the fall sometimes. I do. The questions I have on Florida are going to be the depth and the length of the lineup, because the top few guys are really impressive, and we can get into that. But I think that's going to be the big question. And what can Tommy Slater do to come in and help? Maybe a different voice, somebody else instructing you differently than what Drew Allman did. Some guys are probably going to, I guess, excel with that different voice, and other guys maybe not as much. So that's something else that we can focus on as we head into the spring.
Yeah, Tom Slater, Auburn's head coach from 2005, 2008, just to clean that little bit up there. Yeah, an interesting hire. Obviously knows the league. As you mentioned, has like a strong instructional background, having been a pro, coach in pro ball. So his job is to really just kind of get this ship back in the harbor at the end of the fall. Like, is really kind of the long and the short of it. Get guys their work and then get in. Get in for the semester break. Was there, before we get into some of the specifics on the field, was there like a vibe, of just like, was there kind of a weird feeling to it, or maybe just because it was in a minor league park, it's hard to get vibes?
Maybe a little bit. I think, the Geralman thing had just happened, right? So it happened the day before. I'm actually driving down there as this happening. So that was still new. Obviously O'Sullivan had been out for the week prior, so it was kind of sparse, from a coaching standpoint, and there was no post game availability, things like that were different. But on the field, I mean, I think once the game started, and please, I sure wish Georgia was there. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, actually, I was there 2 years in a row. It was a near capacity crowd in Jacksonville, and with Florida versus JU, it is certainly the crowds have been are not the same. Certainly wish we could get that back going. But anyway, it was a good to see Florida. It was good to see some of the new players. Ethan Surwich, the Ole Miss transfer. He looks like a star, Joe. I mean, he had a great. He's been slugging it all over the field all fall, and certainly he demonstrated that. He had a Oppo homer Friday night, and Brendan Lawson, he's got a chance to be 1-1 next year in 27. I mean, it's an absolute laser show in BP. He's just peppering it. and he continued that in the game. Just hit high exit velo. It's the question for him is going to be what position does he project at? He played third. He played first Friday night. They've been playing him at short some as well. Where does he land? Cade Curlin's at second, so he's probably not going to end up there. So it's that's really one of the things that we watch from them is just what the lineup construction looks like. But they do have some positional versatility. They've got the top of the lineup, especially, I think is going to stack up with anyone in the country. I'm just not sure. After that, Blake Sear did not play, so he'll add some length to that lineup once he returns. And then what do they do behind the plate? That's a question. Shortstop is maybe a little bit of a question as well. But on the mound, I didn't have a whole lot of questions. That they look really good, and I didn't even see some of the guys. I saw 6. So I'll be interested to get your take on what you see some of the other guys that I missed.
Yeah, I wonder if it being that when I'm going to see them, they're going to be at home. I wonder if it's I know they've typically, when they've played in that minor league park, it tends to be a little more straight up than a lot of fall games are. So we'll see. I would like them to play a few more innings just so you see, more guys. But quickly on Lawson, I think corner infield, I think is his ultimate landing spot. I think third base is the optimistic viewpoint there, but I do think there's going to be some pressure from the scouting community, maybe not so much this year, but going into the 27 season to try him at shortstop. And we'll see. I think he's good enough he's a good athlete, but we'll see if he's going to have the range and the quickness and all that kind of stuff. But that's something to talk about in the future. Let's talk about the mound specifically, Mark. I mean, I know there's a cast of characters we know: Liam Peterson, Aiden King, Luke McNeely. So certainly, if any of those guys stood out in particular, please say so. But I am kind of more curious, perhaps, to hear about some of the other guys that threw that we just haven't seen as much of.
Luke McNeely was really good, and he's had these outings where he just dominates, right? And then it seems like he comes out the next outing and it's not the same. Well, this is his third year in the program, and a lot of times it just sort of clicks, right? And the consistency sets in the longer that you stay in the program. Maybe it's here, because he was probably the most impressive arm, just from a results standpoint. He was good. Let's see. Another one would be Jackson Barbary. He was really good. I mean, it's flying out of his hand, high 90s. It's a lot of swing and miss. I don't know what his role is going to be, whether he's an end of the game guy, but he was really good. And Josh Rittenauer, who missed all of last year with injury, he was a highly regarded prospect last year. So he's redshirt freshman. He was really good. He closed the game. He's obviously going to get a shot at the end of the game as well. He was very impressive. Russell Sandifer is a UCF transfer. Had a little bit of trouble with the zone, but the stuff was real. And a lot of times in the fall, you just have a day like that, especially. So I think he's heading into the spring. He would be the leader for that third starter spot with McNeely right there on his heels. I think they're in good shape there. Saw Liam Peterson. He was really good. He got in a little trouble in the first inning with 2 walks and pitched his way out of it, and then came back and was really good in the second inning. Aiden King threw 1 inning. I think he did give up a double, but it was otherwise he just did what he wanted, right? And I think with those 2 guys at the top of the rotation, they're going to stack up with anybody. And I think the other thing is some guys that we didn't see that could really help. Cooper Walls, the Hawaii transfer, I understand he's had a really impressive fall. He's going to have a role at some point. Maybe he's a midweek starter. Maybe he's a key bullpen guy. He's there. Christian Rodriguez is another guy who should have a primary role. I didn't see him either. One of the guys who was pitcher last year, Caden McDonald, he started at first base. He's going to be in the hunt, first base DH kind of spot. Offensively, had a really strong summer swinging the bat. And, you have to wonder if his role this year, instead of being the primary pitcher, which that's what he was last year, if maybe the innings are harder to come by for him and he's actually in the lineup quite a bit. And if he devotes himself full time to being a hitter, can he? Because he's a power bat. Can he be that 12 to 15 home run guy that Florida probably needs to help lengthen that lineup?
Yeah, it feels like maybe Florida's in the opposite position of where they were at times last year, due in part to injuries. Let's be real, where it felt like they just needed. Like they just were going to need to find some fresh arms, and they were cycling through guys, and now with this year, to your point, if things go well on the mound, they might not need some of those guys that are kind of more fringy parts. And I saw Cade McDonald in the Cape Cod League. I really liked what I saw. Like I'm kind of a believer, so I buy that. If that's if he ends up being an impact hitter, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. I kind of hope Cooper Walls has the right expectations. The guy who grew up in California, then he went to Hawaii, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go to Florida. It'll be the same. It'll be beaches and palm trees, and Gainesville it's not quite that. Oh, they do have palm trees behind the fence, behind the fence there at Condren Family Ballpark. So he will see palm trees, but probably won't see nearly as much shoreline, at least not close to campus. Let's move on to Georgia, Mark. You kind of went down there, or I guess for you up there. I mean, just to see Georgia for one, but also you kind of had like a specific idea in mind you wanted to talk to Wes about. So you'll have a story on that. So I don't want to spoil too much of that, but just give listeners kind of an idea of why you went up there and what you were looking to talk to Wes Johnson about, and how that went.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Georgia has done roster construction a little bit different than some of their peers. They've been heavier in the portal. They've been certainly an older team, and talked to Wes about that, just kind of getting his ideas on it, what's behind it, how do you manage it, when you have a new roster, mostly new roster every year with your team culture and norms and all of that. So have some good stuff coming that we'll run with our season preview in January, February timeframe. On the field, I mean, they do have a few guys coming back that are going to have key roles. Daniel Jackson is a really interesting player. He's a catcher. Wes said he's a guy who could hit 20 home runs and steal 20 bases. I mean, he's one of the fastest players on their team, just a freak athlete. His catcher could also play outfield. He batted clean up in their game. He's going to have a key role. You just can't keep a guy like that off the field with his tools. Colby Branch is back to play shortstop. Makes all the plays, middle of the field. You know what you're getting there. I think the other returnee is Trey Phelps. He's been playing third base, and that's where they want him to win that job. And right now he's played well enough defensively to hold it down. He does have positional versatility, play first base, play the outfield, but he's going to hit second or third in that lineup and be one of the stalwarts for that team. But then when you look at all of the new guys, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Just talking about them positionally, one of the guys who really had a good day, Jody, I guess it's Oriak. I need to get a pronunciation guide.
From New Mexico, right?
Yeah. He played first base, had a bunch of hits, like a doubles machine, man. He's going to hit some home runs too, but he looked good. And he's competing at first base with Bryce Callaway, who's the New Orleans transfer. And he had a big day as well. He played the second game that they had. They played 18. And those are two really good options at first base. One's right-handed, one's left-handed, so you could see a traditional split. But I mean, it may be hard to keep them both up, on the bench. So that's going to be interesting. Um, Probably the biggest surprise for me was Kenny Ishikawa. He is the Seattle transfer. He is going to be the center fielder. He's going to be the leadoff man, and he might be a weekend starter. So that's a tremendous impact player coming into this league from a mid-major who's appears to be ready to come in and be one of the most impactful players in the conference. He's speedy. He stole 2 bases when I was there. Seemed like he was on base in the middle of everything, in every rally. And then on the mound, he's mid-90s, 4 pitches. He really competes. As a position player, those guys typically are really good competitors, and he's left-handed. So there's just a lot to like there.
A little bit of a Mark Kotze, center fielder.
Maybe so, yeah.
Key pitcher, steals bases, bats leadoff.
Yeah. Other guys that caught my eye, Michael O'Shaughnessy, the Davidson transfer. I don't know where he's going to play. It could be outfield. He could be in right. He could be DH. He's been having a really good fall with a bat, and he followed that up when I was there. Henry Allen is another guy, the Northwest Florida State Community College transfer. He was at Mississippi State earlier in his career. Versatile player. I don't know where he plays. There's a lot of competition there, but he's a guy with a lot of tools. Kind of a little bit streaky, Wes said, but he's going to help them. It's just a question of how you get him on the field.
He had the big summer in the Northwoods League. I did an episode with Patrick Ebert of this show where he talked about Henry Allen, and he kind of compared it to different player, but compared it to the type of Northwoods League summer that Charlie Condon had, where it was a guy who, was a little bit under the radar, different things. Condon was a redshirt guy. He's a JUCO transfer, Henry Allen is, but in terms of just an anonymous guy who showed up to the Northwoods League and just kind of like took over. The numbers are crazy for Woodbat League for Henry Allen and Northwoods. So continue. But yeah, that listeners that have listened to us all off season might remember that name.
Yeah. So a pair of freshmen, and Georgia doesn't have a ton. I think they have 5 this year, but 2 of them positionally are certainly going to play. Ty Peoples and Cole Johnson are both outfielders. They're competing for starting spots. They're going to play, and I think just from they both had tremendous falls, good athletes, potential stars. Right by the time they're out of there. I was trying to think who else positionally. Brennan Hudson has had a really good fall. He's a catcher, probably their best receiver behind the plate, but he's going to have a role. He's had a good fall. Ryan Black is competing with Rylan Lujo at second base. I think that's another one that they're going to go back and forth all year. Brian Wynn is also in that mix to try to find time there. It's a really crowded position group. They're going to have a lot of options, and I don't know how all that's going to shake out positionally, because you probably won't know, because I do think that this is going to be one of those teams. They're going to go out and they're going to bludgeon people early in the year and play a lot of different lineups and looks and try to figure it out. And by conference play, maybe they'll know which 12 to 13 guys are going to be in the lineup regularly.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be it's going to be another year where we're going to have some really gaudy scores early for them, and we're just going to have to wait until conference play really to get a really good, to get any sort of feel for where they actually are in the pecking order. That's just the reality of the schedule and the way the team is built, the way Foley Field plays, like just a little different factors. We're going to have some patience and fight the urge to get a little bit overheated about their offense early in the year, because it's going to be impressive early in the year. Like we just guarantee it.
And one of the things I feel I should point out is, in years past, I really think Georgia's been a little too enamored, trying to feed the trees. This year, there's been a concerted effort to go more inside out, go the other way. And they're big, strong enough guys. They can hit it out that way. Yeah, and you're cutting down on that monster cut. Certainly not everyone is doing that, every AB, but there's a lot of them that are. Even even in an inter squad against West Georgia, I saw a lot of inside out cuts and hitters counts where they're just going with the pitch, and there it is, a double down the line, or driving the ball into the gap. And I do think that with the losses in the postseason, that there was a little bit too much swing and miss. I think looking back on that, this is to address that, and they did it not only with stressing it, in practice, but also who they went out to acquire in the portal, guys who would, who are good fits, that aren't going to be all or nothing guys. And I do think that as a result, I'm bullish on Georgia's offense. I mean, obviously they play in a hitter's ballpark. They got a lot of big, strong guys, but I think from a skill standpoint, they're going to be a little bit different than what we've seen the first 2 years under Wes Johnson.
I have to give him a little bit of credit. Like, part of when I was saying we're going to have to exercise some patience, I was assuming is, schedule related, but I have to give the credit. Like, their opening series is Wright State. Like, that's a team that, really pushed Vanderbilt last year in the regional. Vanderbilt was lucky to get out of that game alive. And they got Samford weekend 2. And, Samford's going to be just like Wright State, going to be undermanned, but they're not going to be intimidated. Right. That's just not, those programs are just, they relish the opportunities. And so if, like, Georgia's, they very well might lose at least one of those 6 games, right? Like, and that wouldn't be a shock, and wouldn't be necessarily some huge indictment. So, give them credit. They actually are playing a couple of pretty good mid-major opponents right out of the gate. So,
and those are good RPI games too, because those are teams that you expect to have success in their.
They're going to win a bunch of games.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, Mark. Let's spin it forward a little bit. We've both got some places we're going the next few weeks. I start off with South Carolina. As listeners are listening to this, it'll be same day, Thursday evening. South Carolina taking on College of Charleston in Charleston. Second year in a row they've done this. Kind of a cool deal. Pretty good crowd last year. I expect another good crowd this time around. Weather was kind of yucky last year, so if the weather's nice, and I haven't looked, but knock on wood, I imagine a big crowd will be out there to see it. And it's one of those deals where I'm just going just to lay eyes on a bunch of new faces for South Carolina. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some good players who are back. I don't know if he'll pitch, but Jake McCoy, obviously, most likely their Friday guy. KJ Scobie starting shortstop, nice player. Bo Hollins, nice player. But outside of that and those guys and a couple of others, like, it is much like Georgia. Just like a lot of new faces. They went heavy in the portal. They've got some JUCO guys. So it really is just going to be an exercise in, double checking the roster to make sure I'm looking at the right guy and, all of it, getting myself familiar with that. So I'm intrigued. I really don't know what to expect. College of Charleston's a good team. They beat South Carolina last year in this game to the extent that matters in the fall. So we'll see, but very much looking forward to it because I don't know what to expect. Looking forward to getting a, and they pitched pretty well. Did South Carolina against Charlotte? They played Charlotte last weekend, and they did pitch it pretty well against a Charlotte lineup that I think is pretty good because I've also seen Charlotte this fall. So maybe a good sign there. It was a lot of the new guys pitched it against Charlotte and did pretty well, and so I think that's a reason for cautious optimism, at least about that unit. But I'm going to, suffice to say, Mark, I'm going to be clinging tightly to my team issued roster when I go see South Carolina, because I'm going to need it, most definitely. After that, I've got Auburn coming up. And you and I have talked a decent bit about Auburn. I've got them against Kennesaw. I'm also just interested because Kennesaw's got a new stadium. Well-deserved. It's a program that's had to do as much as they could with a little, and now they've got a little bit more in terms of facilities, so good for them. I want to see Auburn pitch just because it seems like that's been year over year kind of where they've had questions, and they do a really good job patching it together every year. But that freshman class of arms, some of whom came along just fine last year, some of whom were a little slower going, and we knew that. if I see some of those guys in the mound, what does that look like? Do they look like they've taken steps forward? So I'm looking forward to that, because I think we're all kind of waiting for Auburn's next frontline guy. I mean, you don't have to be Casey Mize. You could be something less than Casey Mize, but for so long that was kind of a hallmark of Auburn's teams under Butch was they've always got a guy on Friday, and it's been a little while. No disrespect to the guys that have been doing it on Fridays. I think they've done a really good job of turning a dollar into $2.50, metaphorically speaking, in terms of getting stuff out of their Friday guys. But we're kind of waiting on their next dude, and he might be on the roster now, and I won't find out based on one fall game, but I am intrigued just to get my look at that. I don't know if you have thoughts there based on who's back, but
yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, those freshmen from a year ago, now that they're sophomores, a lot of times those guys make big jumps. And who's it going to be? Is it going to be Alvarez or Chatterton or Sanders or Catwood or whoever it might be? And then some of the new players as well. They recruit well, so I have no doubt there'll be somebody that we aren't talking about that's going to emerge, and maybe you'll spot him, and we can talk about him next week.
We absolutely will. I've also got Florida and Georgia Southern. Also, we just talked a lot about Florida, so we won't talk much there. But I will say, I think there's going to be some atmosphere there. Georgia Southern is another one of those. I don't want to say mid-major because it's Sun Belt, but you know what I mean. Like one of those teams that is going to take advantage, or at least attempt to take advantage of this opportunity to send a message. And so I always like those kind of fall matchups where it matters a little bit just to make a good impression. So I think there's going to be a little bit of juice in the stadium for that one. So I'm looking forward to it. Georgia Southern's obviously talented enough to make that interesting, at least for a little while. So definitely looking forward to my look at Florida and seeing how things have settled in there. Mark, you are also going to see LSU this coming weekend.
Yeah.
They are playing in Hammond against Southeastern Louisiana. That game, not surprisingly, is sold out. I don't know how many tickets they had to sell to that game, but the number that they could have sold is basically infinite. So that should be a really good atmosphere. You have been warned that you will be sitting outside, which is not a huge surprise given that it's a small press area at Southeastern. But just your early thoughts on seeing LSU this weekend.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, they played Samford 21 innings last weekend.
It's a lot of innings.
Yeah, and so I'm excited to see the new arms, see the new players, and also see some of the returnees. Who's making the jump, right? And it's always good to see LSU because they're going to be one of the preseason favorites nationally, and see how some of these other teams compare to them is kind of a measuring stick, because they, when you win 2 titles in 3 years, you're what everyone is striving to become. So it'll be fascinating to see. Just it's just one day, but it'll be interesting to see what they look like.
How many innings do you think they'll play in Hammond? 28, 35, 42 even?
Yeah, I've got to work the next day, so I've got to leave, by midnight anyway. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope they keep it down to at least 28 or so.
Yeah.
4 7-inning games. Yeah, I'm with you. Just they're the standard now. Two titles in 3 years, especially with this Tennessee team is going to be pretty good too. But now that Tony is not in the picture anymore,
changes it. Yeah,
it just changes the dynamic, right? So and maybe Josh Elander picks that ball up and runs with it. That wouldn't shock me either. But for right now, like LSU really is the standard, and seeing how they keep that up, that's a lot of pressure to keep that up year after year. But that's what being at LSU is all about. So
that's what you signed up for. Yeah.
That's right. You know that going in. So I'm excited to hear about them as well. Like I said, we are kind of barreling down. So next week's episode, we'll recap what we saw in the fall. But then coming up, we have some special episodes. We're going to have some guests on. We may have mentioned the name of someone we are hoping to have on. I may have mentioned his name here in the last couple minutes. So there's that. We also need to do our SEC transfer draft. We do that every year where we draft teams of SEC players who transferred into the SEC in a given year. We usually invite our friend Aaron Fitt on for that one because no one loves a podcast game like Aaron Fitt. So we are going to bring him on to do that with us. We've got that episode coming. And then, like I said, before you know it, we're going to be in preview mode. So we're almost there, folks. We have almost made it through the long off season. I noticed that college basketball has started the other day. So that's one more just like seasonal checkbox that we can check off, like before their season is over, we will have started. So we're getting there. It's taken a while, but we're definitely getting there. So very much looking forward to opening day. So that is going to do it for this edition of Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Want to thank Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover for the better part of a year now. Very much happy to have them on board. Excited about that partnership moving forward. I want to thank Mark, as always, for joining me, and you, the listener, for listening. We'll talk to y'all soon.